Okay, it's June 2nd, 2 p.m. We're in the City Hall. We call this a conference room or planning, or the City Council chambers, I guess.
Right.
President or myself, Don Kane, Michelle Burke, and City Manager Charles Bergson. This is being recorded, and participation in the conversation past this point is consent to record. Okay, so.
So the conversation with Planning Commission, what I took away from it is basically it's a non-punitive inspection. It's 90 days to correct after notice of properly cited violations. That we're not in violation of zoning because 602B is what we're doing. And so it is not saying that we don't have a zoning basis to request water is false. Therefore, the water permit needs to be issued, and I've yet to hear anything that complies with our code in terms of issuing the water permit, anything else you would need. We filled out the application that you said we needed to. We provided a drawing of what's being installed, and all we get back is we need a conditional use permit. It's like, no, that's a fail. That was part of Planning Commission saying no.
And then
There
also,
are three things. One is we perceive that it's the 601 section says it's a conditional use permit.
601?
601, section 601. There are lists of violations, notice violations, code violations for 1016, and we would like to set up an inspection to meet you on the property. And if it's non-punitive, I understand that.
So you're referencing 601 and 1016?
see, this is why we wanted you to send us which ordinances you'd be referring to before we had the meeting today. That was part of our last conversation.
We'll send it to you.
So that, but we wanted to be able to look at it before we came to the meeting to know what it is we're talking about. So now we have to delay and look it up.
Right.
Okay.
And so, yeah, by denying sending it, as was requested, it wastes time here.
I'm not denying it. You will get it.
You said you would send it.
No, I didn't send it. You demanded it before the meeting. I couldn't get it in time. I will send it.
Did we not discuss this a week or two ago?
We did.
I'm not talking about today's request. I'm talking about on the phone when we set up this meeting, making the request. And well, this wasn't a today new request.
I said, you asked for it. If I could get it in time, I'm going to get it. I haven't sent it. And you'll receive it.
So 601, it says are intended primarily, but 602 lists the permitted primary uses. 602B is on that list. It is the second item, and it is what we are doing.
Okay.
So we have a basis for the water permit.
We have a disagreement, but we'll proceed from there.
Okay, so we need to bring this back to Planning Commission because Planning Commission was very clear about this, and then you're denying what they said.
I'm not denying what they said.
So I'm going to have to write out what they said.
We had disagreed.
What was your understanding of what they said then?
They said to go inspect the property with you all.
Especially during that portion of the meeting when Chris Jones clearly asked you if you had actually read the ordinances. There was a reason why he asked that question, and it was exactly because of this.
I've read the ordinances. I've discussed it with the planners.
And 602B says that a primary permitted use is?
Yeah, you'll receive our letter.
It says what we have repeatedly said it says.
We're going to disagree.
Because you refuse to acknowledge our own code.
Okay, that's your turn. I refuse.
Okay.
So, and you said 1016.
You say I refuse. It's we differ.
Okay, so back to earlier before the meeting, you're acting as city planner, you said.
Right.
Okay. And city engineer.
Acting city engineer.
Okay. Okay. So the part of the zoning code that precedes some of this stuff says that the primary purpose is to ensure harmonious use of the land as per the city goes. And
It says residential use.
I'm sorry, it's the general, what the purpose of the general, or the zoning
Our districts are intended primarily to provide living area for low-density, single-family dwelling.
and,
And, right,
go back to this. With regulations designed to accomplish the following: to promote and encourage a suitable environment for family life. And what would create an environment for family life better than having a tree-lined path when the hiking path goes in, and us putting the trees and stuff in there, and the gardens, and those types of things? How is that not?
well, Don, give us a plan that says that.
Okay, that gets us back to the other part. What municipal code states that we have to submit a plan for the primary permitted use of growing fruit and nut trees and vegetables and horticultural specialties on a non-commercial basis? What is that pathway? And the reason I ask is that you keep saying it's conditional use when it clearly says,
We differ on it.
well,
What the code says.
602B is unequivocal. It states it.
601, start at 601.
601 doesn't supersede 602. 602 lists the primary permitted uses. That's there.
I would suggest, you don't have to, I would suggest that you send a letter to the planning commission explaining why you think 601 does not apply, and you apply under 602, let the commission decide.
602 doesn't, or 601 doesn't supersede 602. 602,
Then tell the, present that to the commission.
602 clearly states what the primary permitted uses are.
Okay, Don,
Doesn't-
yes,
doesn't-
yes, take it to commission.
So that's where we're at with that particular part. So at
And then
this
you're
point,
not gonna allow the inspection?
Not until we agree to this
Okay,
stuff.
then I will tell them that
And what is
also.
the
You
other
report-
one that you said 1016?
Yeah, there's a notice of violation, nuisances.
That's
1016.
nuisance, so that's why I can't look it
You-
up under
you-
zoning code,
Right. 1016, yeah.
because it's not listed there.
okay, could you send us a letter then outline as required by municipal code,
Yeah.
specifying what part of the nuisance code we're in violation of,
No,
and
but also understand, so.
and how-
Let me finish the thought.
no,
on
let
the
me
last one.
finish.
All right.
Okay, and how we're in violation of that, and what the corrective action is for that. And this, like I said, and the reasonable amount of time to correct that action. That's in the municipal code. That's the information that you have to send to us.
Yes, I will.
Okay. And yeah, like I said, the inspection, we're perfectly happy to have an inspection as long as we can have an agreement that if you find a code violation, that we have adequate time to address that. The problem with this is that the way the code is written, your code enforcement person can demand that we have it corrected in 2
I
weeks
understand.
or something like that, and that's just,
Let me get you, I'm confused here. You're saying send a code violation, give you adequate time. You're saying no inspection.
No, that's not it. The reason why there is no inspection
You're saying no
allowed at
inspection.
this
So you're saying both?
time
Saying both?
is
I
because
understand the
we
commission's-
have not agreed to the terms, because you are denying what planning commission directed you to do.
That's the-
And you're giving me we agree to disagree. The whole point of having that meeting was to have some clarity. And because it wasn't written down, because I didn't hear the words come out of your mouth just like yeah, we'll do that, that's why I sent a letter several days later saying, we need to meet again. We've got a meeting coming up. Let's make sure this is clear. And then you didn't put it on that meeting, and you canceled the following meeting for no agenda items, as if this letter had not been sent to the Planning Commission. And so you blew it off. And what I was asking was to make sure that we were all on the same page, that 602B is what the code is in our municipal code. It is written, that's what it
And my
says.
suggestion is, I think it's 601, you say it's 602, to bring it to the commission.
Okay, why didn't you bring that to the planning commission then at the meeting where you were claiming we're in violation of zoning? You had the opportunity to. If you presented that as your argument, then we certainly would have been prepared to address that.
But that's what the commission said. The commission said, I found it out of zoning compliance. They said, no, give them a chance. Let's go look at the property. I mentioned the issues about, insurance, inspection, fire safety, those things that the city
You're
has.
named insured on my insurance.
Can I speak? I expressed the city's concerns that we still have, and then the commission suggested, and you agreed, that we would go look at the property.
They suggested that we work together to resolve the issue,
right.
correct? And also, just to make sure this is very
But
clear.
down here, you don't want to do that.
Also, just to make sure that this is very clear and unequivocal, we agree to an inspection as long as the city agrees that if you find violations, we have 90 days to correct those.
Don, I have said that from day one.
No, you
It's got to be in
haven't.
writing.
In fact,
Must be in writing.
This letter to you said that. I said again, specifically, I said, it's understood the city will work with you to resolve any code violations. If you want the time, I'll be more specific if you want.
Oh, yeah.
This is
this is basically all we've been asking for.
Well,
Jeff.
did I not say
I'm
it?
sorry, the email you sent us today clearly stated no. They said that we could inspect within 90 days of April 5th.
I'm just repeating what they said, 90 days.
That's not the same as saying that, okay, how about if we
Okay,
agree?
It's semantics, okay.
Well, it's not
Semantics are
semantics.
kind of really important.
Right.
Yeah, words matter.
Well, no, understand, subject to whether it's semantics where the 90 days start, you were saying no. There was
I'm
no
saying
inspection at
no
all.
if.
Again, we're saying that we agree to an inspection. Let me be unequivocal again. Yes, we agree to an inspection as long as you agree to and send us documentation that
No,
you
what's this?
agree to specifically that if you find code violations, we have 90 days to correct those.
Sure.
That is,
Okay.
write that very simple statement, just like that. Great, we're more than happy to have you come inspect.
Don, yes, I understand. Today's email is, I'm just starting at, you're not even setting the date.
No,
No, of course not, because we
So
cannot
understand that email, you're
start
taking that email out of context.
until,
That
you're
email's
taking
out of
everything out of context. We cannot start the clock running until
no.
Pull
we
up
have
the-
in
pull up-
writing agreement.
pull up the email.
The email, well, I don't even know if there's an inspection. So when I said the 90 days, I said there's no inspection. Now Don and Don Michelle, this I said is understood. We'll work with you from the time for correction. I get that.
Okay,
And then that's been from April 5th. I've said that.
but the reason that we wanted to meet,
So
the
please
reason-
don't make reference to that email. I mean, I'm just trying to get that, comply with what the commission said.
the reason that we wanted to bring it back before planning was clarification of this,
Right.
because this is not clear.
This is
Right.
exactly what we were trying to avoid.
You want a
This
letter
is
with 90 days? I'll
exactly
do it.
why
Yeah, but
on the
it's-
April
Why you
8th I
couldn't-
asked for
I
this.
mean, then why didn't you ask it after you got the letter?
That's what
I asked
that's what her
3
letter.
days after we met. I sent you guys a letter saying, hey, we need
That said 6
clarification.
months. That said 6 months.
No, it says that they offered 3 months or 6 months, and we accepted 3 months. We said yes. 3 months is fine. 90 days is fine. Dean stepped up and said, yes, we're happy to expedite the process. And in return, it says specifically in the letter, in return for having the 90 days to
Right.
correct any violation,
Right.
we would allow an inspection. It clearly says that in the letter. So we have a letter clearly stating that, yes, we'll allow an inspection, but we just need to agree on that point.
Okay, yes.
Okay, so we can set an inspection date as soon as we receive that letter.
Okay.
Okay? We just want to be clear on,
I mean,
on that.
send the specific language you want. I'll put it in the letter.
Okay. It's pretty much similar to the letter that I sent 3 days after the Planning Commission saying this is what we need to clarify.
Okay.
And so we have not been delaying. Within days of that meeting, it's like, okay, these are the points that I understood that we're in agreement on.
And
then this has not been addressed. And now you're like, well, we've got we need to inspect. Let's set a date. And it's like, no. First, we have to do we're agreeing to what we're agreeing to, because that was muddy. And every communication that we have to you proves just how muddy it is, which is why verbal isn't enough.
Okay.
And that's why I wanted this to be clarified, or we wouldn't have to do this right now.
And then also, we were just informed today that by Yvonne that your building official had rejected our building permit or denied our building permit application
For water.
for water. We've never received any communication from the city of that determination or that fact.
You're getting that too.
We've never received anything from the city regarding that and the justification for the denial.
Okay.
Okay, and then also, if you want a site plan, I've offered before to give you, in general, a site plan. What do you require on said site plan? Does it need to be drawn by a licensed architect or engineer? Does it need to be
trees.
wet stamped? What are the requirements that you want of this?
Well, you can sketch it out. I think I've seen you have done some rough graphics in the past.
Yeah, we have, but I'm reading city ordinances, and the city ordinances, say that you want a full size drawing, and then two of them reduced to 11 by 18. You want to know about and this is talking about site plan review.
For building stuff, which is different than this.
But that's what I'm going on. And then it lists a bunch of other stuff that doesn't really apply, so I'm not sure exactly what to skip over in those things.
Don Michelle, about 2 years ago, you submitted some graphics, and that was closed, but then you get to take that and just
Because-
approve, application.
Yeah, the problem is though
And we've taken stuff like that from
okay, and if that's,
I mean, sometimes you get a full-blown track map, like the guy across the street. He has to put in a track map.
yeah,
It's a
But
map.
he's planning to actually build buildings.
Yeah, and he's hired an engineer, and he's got
Yeah.
that's.
but he's putting a development in, correct? I mean, he's doing a development?
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's,
That's the other end of the scale.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and that's why we're trying to get some clarity, because our code doesn't have details for what is officially wanted for something that is not a building or structure.
Right. Okay.
Because buildings and structures are what's normally expected. Open space and green space that's private is non-standard, although it is in our code as a primary use in residential. So trying to figure out how to comply with what you want, it sounds like what you've been wanting is more of a site plan, but you keep asking for a use plan on a property that does not require a conditional use for the uses that are happening. So this has been at odds, because you're asking for something that doesn't match our code. And maybe just a site plan is a match, but that's not what you asked for. You asked for a use, and it's like, no, mismatch. And that's why we're butting heads, and I'm like, no.
All right. But
Okay.
either way, whether it's a site plan or a site plan with a use permit, it's still a site plan. You can
Well,
do either one.
okay, but a use permit, the only use permits that Isleton City Code has is a conditional use permit, not just a plain use permit. And in common vernacular, when they're talking about use permits, like Sacramento County, this is all in their ordinances also, their use permits are things like minor use permits, conditional use permits. And Isleton's city code does not differentiate, does not define what a plain use permit is.
Right.
Okay, so when you keep coming back with it's a conditional use, and planning commission said, no, it's not. And
Okay, we differ on it. That's,
No, they said-
okay, all right, we differ.
We'll just have to play the
They didn't
recording in
rule-
public again.
They didn't rule whether it was a conditional use permit or not. They just say no, they not say yes.
again,
So we're different on that.
again, we'll provide documentation when we need to, but Chris Jones very clearly,
Yeah, he said, but is there a resolution to that effect?
You didn't, did you request there be
Did
a
you?
resolution?
Did you? No. No,
So
no,
that's
there's no
why we have to
decision.
get stuff in writing, because obviously what they say is not binding on you unless we have it
What they say, we
explicitly.
have applications and permits and requests, and it goes to resolutions and it gets documented. So we do.
so either way, like I said, we'll provide documentation of what their understanding at that meeting was. And, Chris Jones, who's infinitely more knowledgeable on this stuff than I am, was very unequivocal about that, about the definition and meaning of that code. So anyway, but yeah, I'll be happy. I'll sketch up a site plan for you. The reason the last site plan was abandoned was because, well, a couple of things at this point. One is that the alterations that we're showing to these shipping containers, it turns out, are not allowed. Because if you alter the shipping container, it becomes something else. So that part we'll leave alone for now. And also that it was for a conditional / interim use permit, and that vein was abandoned long ago because there is no interim use permit outlined by municipal code. And so, that's obviously in a pathway we
Plus,
can
what
go
I
down.
proposed was so radically changed by the city to not reflect any of the needs that we were trying to meet that it became pretty much worthless. And so that was kind of a shock that the city is like, yes, let's do all, let's work on it. And then it got turned into, let's do none of the things except the barest minimum. It's like, yeah, that's not what we were discussing. So
But something
that didn't work.
there's something to keep in mind, though, is that on the site plan, there will be the containers, but the containers will be set back somewhat. Also, our intent is, one, the fruit trees and the vegetation up in the front will go a lot toward screening those things so they're not a public eyesore. And don't forget, we took the time and the money and the expense out to paint those things so they weren't a giant eyesore. They're a very innocuous kind of tan beige color, and they don't stick out like a sore thumb, not like the red oxide color that a normal shipping container is.
Or the blues and others.
Yeah,
I
but
painted
we
it
did-
intentionally to match the dry grass. Like, I picked a color to
but,
blend in with the background.
We intentionally did that to create less disruption. Our other plan is that we're going to put up trellises in front of the containers to grow climbing vines and vegetation and stuff like that on those, which will even further obscure the view of the containers, right? But much like any other development, when you first put plants in, they're not screening anything until they get to grow. And so that's,
Part of why we need more water, because I can't put in decent irrigation without having
Right.
water pressure.
or just
So I
water.
end up hand watering the plants that I brought with me when I moved out here.
As long as the arsenic doesn't poison all the fruit trees. Anyway, yeah.
The sodium levels in our water is hard on them. Not all of them have been able to survive it because our water here has too much salt in it. It may be within legal compliance, but the plants here in town don't like it. It's not that good for us, even if it is a legal level.
It's too high, what, in calcium and sodium?
Sodium. Sodium, yeah. Calcium isn't the problem, sodium is.
Yeah, for the plants anyway.
Yeah.
But like I said, so as soon as we can get, as soon as we get the documentation that saying that is acceptable, that post-inspection will have 90 days to correct any issues.
Okay.
We'll be happy to schedule a time and date for an appointment.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay. I'll probably have that out Monday, or if not tomorrow.
Okay, that'd be great. Because trust us, Chuck, we would love to see resolution of all this stuff. We've been,
Well, you had asked us last summer to give you a letter as to, about the insurance and about the zoning, and we sent that all to you, and copies of the insurance again. And then there was no response, as if our answer was good. And then we get another notice saying, nope, you can't. And like many of the notices, it doesn't cite the ordinance that says what we're exactly in violation of. It's just this kind of general, well, you can't. And it's like, okay, which ordinance says that? And it doesn't get cited.
and so, understand, and I'm sure if the position's reversed, you would. It makes it very difficult for us to take definitive steps on trying to do something in terms of trying to make improvements and those types of things, because we've got this what feels like a very tenuous situation where if we start doing a bunch of stuff, that it may be all for nothing, because somebody will complain and get us kicked out or whatever. And so trust me when I say we would love to get this resolved, because we're actually chomping at the bit to be able to move forward with this stuff. But we can't at this point with diesel, getting up to 7 something a gallon. We can't afford to spend the diesel to start getting the land ready for cultivation and stuff, even at this point. And so, but that's why you haven't seen a lot of like development type activities going on, and why all the fruit trees aren't in the ground. We're not going to put a $300 fruit tree in the ground just to find out that the city's decided that, well, you can't do that and you can't be there. Well, we can't yank it back out of the ground at that point. And so
It doesn't, or it's likely to
Right,
kill
but
it.
I mean, Don, this is the first I've heard of these plans, so put the plans on paper and
well,
send them to us.
I talked with you about these things. Remember that we had not.
There's been 4 or 5 different proposals.
Well, that's because the requirement from the city and our discoveries of what different ordinances have evolved over time also, right? Because at first it was, well, you're not doing anything there you're permitted to do. But then reading the ordinance, it's like, well, actually, we have been doing something. But the 43 trees that were on the list that are viewable from the street, which are not all of them, they're all like 3 to 5 years old.
Actually, a lot of them are 10 plus years old, because I brought them with me. But most of them actually are.
But go see what a 5 or 10 year old fruit tree costs. So no, we're not just gonna plunk in tens and 20 of thousands of dollars worth of trees in the ground, just to have to end up abandoning them or whatever.
Right.
And that's why you guys haven't seen a lot of progress on our end. Is we've been in this kind of holding pattern. So
I've been trying to figure out, like, well, where can I put fence because of easements, because of layout, because of all of these things? Where can I put the trees? Where can I put any kind of, to where a shipping container, I view it basically as a very large toolbox. Like, where can I put it so I don't have to move it unless, of course, there's a flood and then I want to move it. I want to be able to move it. So where should I put it? And this whole giant question of, well, what is an acceptable layout has been confounded by trying to figure out, well, what's permissible? And we start with, it's like, oh, well, all these things are permissible. And it's like, okay, no, they're not. And then it changes. And it's like, okay, so can we do it like this? Yeah, sure, we'll work with you. And then it's like, no, we can't do that. It's like, okay, what else can we do to try and do something similar? And then you came up with an interim use permit as a pathway between that point in time and whenever the general use plan gets done. And then that got modified so badly by this office that it was useless to us. And it's like, that's not what we talked about. And so then you come back with, well, you're still out of compliance. And it's like, but wait a minute. We just read the code. You guys only told us about the first thing on the list. There's how many things on the list? 13 things on the list?
Yeah.
And number 2 is, well, the whole reason why I moved it to the Delta is number 2 on the list, which was never mentioned to us. So as far as the plans changing, it's because we're trying to figure out how to comply with what has been a moving target. There's a yes and then a no, and then, yeah, sure, how about this? And then that's not what we said. And then well, how about this path? And, oh, well, you can't. And it's like, all right, fine. We're going to read it all ourselves and start telling you guys what we're going to do instead of the other way around, because it's not working well, asking you guys what the ordinances say.
Yeah, and I get it. You know, you're trying to run the city as a one-man show because of budgetary constraints and stuff like that. So I understand the notion of too many things to try to get done at the same time. I get that. But you know, we just need some way to get through this so that we can proceed on. I know I've mentioned to you before that the gardens and stuff down the road, what we're shooting for down the road is a educational nonprofit teaching people how to grow that stuff, because in today's society, the way things are going, that may be an important skill for people to have. You know, we have donors that are willing to donate to us once we get a nonprofit established. Those types of things, and that's what we're looking forward to. And as far as
and some of that is actually on the conditional use list, but what we're doing presently is 602B.
Yeah, and so once we get to that point, obviously we'll apply for a conditional use permit, right? But we got to get this, we've got to get part of it established first before we can do the rest of it. And again, I would submit or just ask you to consider the fact that, a whole section of cherry trees, which blossom beautifully when they're blossoming, lining that hiking path going down the south side of 6th Street isn't disharmonious with what you're trying to do in the city, and same thing with the gardens, and same thing with, because of the agricultural roots of this community, for kids to be able to, to actually see and come and experience that stuff I don't believe is detrimental to the community either. But we need a chance to get ourselves going on that stuff.
Okay.
And that's what we're shooting for, And so there was something else I've forgotten now, but.
There was the water permit info issue.
And the inspection, we've dealt with those two things.
So then you'd request we send you the specific language that you and we are agreeing to.
Yeah, we'll
So
send.
we need to sit down and write that.
We'll send a follow-up email to our conversation today, and our understanding of what you're agreeing to, and let's see if we can come to agreement on that. So, but again, unequivocally, yes, if we can get that statement from you, then yes, we're more than happy to have you come inspect. So.
Yeah. It was never a objection to inspection as a whole. It was an objection to a seeming fairly overt disagreement of what we're exactly talking about. And until we come to an agreement on that, then no, I can't have this very open-ended, yeah, we're just going to inspect. It's like, no.
Yeah. And
No,
also-
we're gonna have to be on the same page first.
And also, we never asked for 6 months, you know, and that should give you some assurance that we do want to get this dealt with. Is we never asked for 6 months. Jack's the one that asked us whether we wanted 3 months or 6 months, and we took the shorter amount of time because we want to get this resolved. So, yeah, I mean, that's, you know, we're not trying to drag this thing out.
But that was a 3 months to correct, which means 3 months from what it is we're actually in violation of.
Right.
Not 3 months to inspect. That's different. First, we have to agree to the preamble.
Well, it's like we need to know what it is, specifically what it is we need to fix before we can start fixing it.
Okay.
Right. And so, you know, for us scrambling around fixing things which actually may not have anything to do with anything before the inspection doesn't make a lot of sense to me. If you have specific grievances, then I'm happy to address those by making it code compliant or whatever, you know. So, okay, are we done?
Yeah.
Good? Okay.
Okay.
Okay, this concludes this meeting.